It's good to be here, but I can't imagine I'm following Joe Biden and Cory Booker. How did that happen? I don't know. It's a pretty tough assignment, that's for sure. But I want to acknowledge some of the firefighters came greeted me at the door from Murfreesboro, Illinois, and from Champaign, Illinois, and Lincolnshire, Illinois. I don't know if Pat Devaney is out there with the Illinois Association of Firefighters, but I can tell you, Harold, we have 217 locals in Illinois and over 14,000 members. They are a proud voice in my hometown of Springfield. They're a proud voice in Chicago for your causes and things that are important to you, and they are a force to be reckoned with at every level because they just don't do their jobs, which would be enough for a lifetime. They dig in, they roll up their sleeves, and they volunteer, and they get involved in campaigns. And having the support of the firefighters, something I've always been proud of, and something you should understand is not lost on members of Congress. Your money's important. When you can support us, that's great. But equally, if not more important, is when you can pitch in and knock on some doors and reach out to your brothers and sisters in labor. It makes all the difference in the world. I don't know if Tom Ryan is here, but I know he's president of local number 2 out of Chicago. Those are some of the best, and I wish them the very best for being here. Did you notice last Thursday, what happened in Galena, Illinois? It's up in the northwest corner of our state. It was another one of these freight trains carrying these oil tanker cars from North Dakota. And if you've noticed, more and more of these are derailing and bursting into flame. In this case, flames shot up hundreds of feet right outside, thank God, the town of Galena, about 2.5 miles out of town. And they called the Galena Fire Department out. They didn't call any politicians, and they didn't call any hedge fund managers. They sure didn't call the Koch brothers. They called the Galena Fire Department out, and they had to tackle one of the toughest, meanest, most dangerous fires that had ever been seen in that region of the country. Before it was all over, first responders were coming in from Illinois, Iowa, and Wisconsin, all of them pitching in, like you, putting on the boots, putting on the equipment, getting on the engines, and heading toward the danger when everybody else was running away from it. That's what you do for a living, and it's something we should never, ever overlook. Let me tell you a story, because I think it really opened my eyes a little bit to your life and what it means. It was 4 weeks ago, and I was invited to go to the Underwriters Laboratory. Now, that's just outside the city of Chicago, up in the suburbs, Harold, and they were having a controlled burn of a building inside a building. It was a house that they built inside this huge structure. And this house was going to be ignited up in flames. And there were monitors all over the house as to the temperature in the room and what they should do. And they were trying to demonstrate the best way, something many of you do every single day, the best way to turn the fans on the fire, to make sure people inside survived and make sure the firefighters survived. I'd never seen anything like it. There were over 100 firefighters there from Canada and the United States, and we were up in an observation room looking down on this building as they lit it up. And there were thermocouples monitoring the temperature as the fire started to spread through this house. And at one point, the firefighters came in and turned their fans on and started doing their work. And I talked to a number of the firefighters there about what this meant. And they said, Senator, it's life or death. One of the firefighters who'd been around for a while said, when I got started in this business, they told us break every window and turn the fan on every window that you can blowing into the place. He said, now we don't do that anymore. The Canadians were saying that they found out how to use the fans in the most effective way some years ago. And it was a great training exercise. What struck me, and as I said, thank God I've never been through a fire, but what struck me is the first time I noticed smoke coming out of this structure was 4 minutes in. At that point, the fire had already peaked in temperature, and it was oxygen deprived. It was starting to come down. So by the time anybody outside detected what was going on, you were pretty deep into the fire itself. Why do I bring that up? Because for many of you say, well, that's pretty routine for what we do. You know how they paid for this demonstration? You know how they gathered together all these firefighters? They did it with grants through the Department of Homeland Security. safer grants, and fire grants, so that firefighters all around the United States of America could have a safer life and come home alive at the end of the day. I thought to myself as I was standing there watching this amazing display, that Department of Homeland Security was being attacked right here on the floors of Congress by the Republican majority. They had decided they would hold up the authority of the Department of Homeland Security to issue any more grants, safer grants, fire grants, as part of a battle, a political battle they were having with President Obama over a much different issue, the issue of immigration. What we did, what the Democrats did in the Senate and in the House, was to call on you. We called Harold and called on you, and we said, come on, tell the story. Tell the world, tell America what these grants mean to you in terms of hiring additional firefighters, making sure you have the right equipment, making certain that you can deal with the issue of the moment, whatever it happens to be. Well, that, to me, is what was so wrong with this Republican leadership and what they've been doing. The fact that they would overlook the obvious, that when it comes to first responders, we're not Democrats, we're not Republicans, we're not independents, we are Americans. And we value what you do for a living, and we value when you put your life on the line, and any politician on Capitol Hill stupid enough to cut off the grants for training and equipment and the people you need to do your job effectively has no business serving in the United States Capitol. I hope you agree with me on that. Now, I don't like it much when politicians get into this autobiographical stuff, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am. I was born and raised in a town called East St. Louis, Illinois. My mother was an immigrant to this country from Lithuania. My father's family had been here for centuries. Neither of them went beyond the 8th grade, but they both went to work for a railroad, New York Central Railroad. That was the westernmost terminus of the railroad in East St. Louis, a big railroad town. And Mom and Dad raised 3 kids, 2 older brothers and myself. It was a good life. I couldn't ask for anything more. Growing up in that town, it's a much different town today, but growing up in that town, it was a blue-collar town. Everybody knew everybody by the parish they lived in. I mean, it was just one of those great places to grow up. And the reason that my mom and dad were able to raise the 3 of us with a good family was pretty basic. My mom, my dad, my 2 brothers, and I were all members of a labor union and damn proud of it. And here's what it meant. What it meant was that my dad and my mom, they both worked for the railroad. Both of them were involved, at least indirectly, in collective bargaining. Dad had been a union officer years before, but they were involved in collective bargaining to determine the basics, what they're going to get paid, the hours they're going to work, the safety of the workplace, their health care, their pension benefits. And there was a union, in this case a railway clerks union, that was going to work for them every day to give them a chance. Now, I grew up right after World War II, and you remember what happened then? All those soldiers came home, and we decided that the key to America's future was to make sure there was a GI Bill, a government program, a GI Bill, to help these veterans get an education, start a business, buy a home. And we thought if we did that, that it would be good for our country. It was the best investment we've ever made. Some of you, your parents, grandparents, used it and effectively used it. But what also happened during this period of time were a couple things that were going on. The growth of labor unions in America. Right after World War II, they'd been around before, but it was after that war that they started growing in size all across the board. And you know what else happened? The middle class in America grew right with them. It meant that my family and families like yours had a fighting chance for a decent paycheck, had a fighting chance for a safe place to work, and decent benefits. And as more and more people became part of labor unions, we saw the middle class in America growing dramatically. And what did that middle class do? Look around where you live. They built homes, they started businesses, they made sure their kids were off to college. It was what I consider to be the moment when the American century got started. We'd fought 2 wars successfully in that century, and now we became the economic powerhouse of the world. The reason that's important is that since then, when it comes to union membership, we've been going downhill. We've lost a lot of our steam and a lot of our members. And not coincidentally, we've seen the middle class declining too. We see people working their fannies off every week, still struggling to get by paycheck to paycheck, and wondering if they'd ever have enough money to send their kids to college. That's because the middle class, even though it's more productive, the working people in this country are more productive, they're not getting paid for it. They're making plenty of profits for the guys at the top, but they're certainly not seeing it in their own paycheck and benefits. That's why I can't understand what the Senate Republicans are doing now. We're engaged in a fight on the floor right now over a rule that was issued by the National Labor Relations Board. It was a simple rule, and the rule basically said if you want to organize a business, you ought to be able to have some basic information about how to contact the employees. What's the email addresses of the employees so you can send them an email if you're an organizer and tell them, here's what's at stake, here's what we think we can do for you. You know what's going on in a lot of these businesses. It's just the employer talking to the employee about how bad unions are. That isn't how it's supposed to work. The employees are supposed to hear both sides of the argument, and then they make the decision in what we consider to be workplace democracy. So the National Labor Relations Board comes out with some basic rules and says, we're going to give workers an opportunity to be informed by both sides before they decide, and they ultimately must decide. Any of you who followed what's going on and maybe in your own lives know, the people that fight unionism don't just come out and say we're going to kill it, they starve it to death. They make it drag on for weeks and months, don't they, Harold? It goes on and on and on, and finally, folks just throw up their hands and give up. So in come the Republicans, and for the third priority in their legislative agenda in this Congress, in the Senate, they want to kill this National Labor Relations Board rule. Well, I can tell you they're not going to do it. We're going to stop them from doing it. We're counting on the president. We're counting on the Democrats to get it done. I'm going to close because I want you all to have time for lunch and time for your next speaker. But I will tell you this. We've got a battle ahead of us. I come from the state of Illinois, proud of it. But our state looks like an island out there, Harold. We are surrounded in the Midwest by right-to-work states. Surrounded. Who would have ever dreamed that I would stand here and tell you that the state of Michigan is a right-to-work state? But it is. And the state of Wisconsin is voting to become a right-to-work state. States that historically have been proud union states are becoming right-to-work states. And you know what that means? That means that the labor unions will still be fighting for those employees where they can, and there's no contribution from the employee toward the effort. We want to make sure that we acknowledge the obvious. When you get into a right-to-work state, you're going to find overwhelmingly that's where wages go down. Now, we have a new governor. His name's Bruce Rauner. You may have seen it in the press if you're not from Illinois. He's a man who's been pretty fortunate in life. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't hold it against him that he's got all that money. I look at it this way. I am only one Powerball ticket away from having the same amount of money as the governor of the state of Illinois. But what I do hold against him is his passionate war against unions. I met with him recently. I told him the same story I just told you. I said, hey, I'm from a union family. I wouldn't be sitting here today if I wasn't from a union family. This isn't a matter of convenience in some campaign of getting a contribution from unions. I believe in it. And I believe that workers have the right to sit down at the table and to bargain collectively for their benefits and their wages and their workplace. So, make no mistake, this is a national effort, state by state by state, to take away something basic and fundamental about America. And I can tell you, the folks on the other side have a ton of money, more money than we'll ever be able to raise through your hard work. And they're spending that money in ways we've never dreamed of. The Koch brothers just announced that in the next election cycle, they're going to spend almost $900 million. Why they didn't round it off to $1 billion, I don't know. But they're only going to spend $900 million. Here's something we know, though. Money can't buy you love, and money can't buy you votes If you've got hardworking people who will step up and say it's worth fighting for, they may have millions, but we've got folks that'll get out and knock on doors, folks that'll talk to their families and their friends, and folks that'll make a difference. In my state of Illinois, thank goodness, we have a good, strong Democratic General Assembly. Veto-proof Senate, veto-proof House. But this governor is determined to make us a right-to-work state. We're going to fight that battle. We're going to win that battle. We're going to keep the union strong in the state of Illinois so that the men and women who count on those unions are going to be able to turn to them more and more in the future. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for being prepared to risk your life for a lot of people who live in your neighborhoods and towns. Thanks for caring enough about your future and the future of firefighters to come out here to Washington, listen to a bunch of politicians come through. Tomorrow, Harold says you're going to have a great day. 13 of them coming through? 11 who want to be President of the United States. I don't know if you get a chance to ask a few of them questions, but I think a couple of them might have messed up on a vote or two along the way on collective bargaining for firefighters after 9/11, which I still think is the right thing to do. My impression, Harold, from my Illinois firefighters are pretty plain spoken. And I think that's true for everybody here. So when you get that chance tomorrow to see these candidates, listen closely. Don't let them pull the wool over your eyes. Make sure they understand what's important to you and your family and the future of America. That's unions and firefighters and making sure that we preserve these basic rights. Thanks for being here.